Hey, thanks for listening to our podcast. If you want to listen live in the central Indiana area, you can hear us on 93.5 FM and 107.5 FM.
Like this on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. He is our friend of the show. He provides everything you need to know following Colts games weekly on a Monday at 4:30. Rick Venturi, he does join us. Hello, Rick.
What do you say, John? I'm sure your outing went well. That Franklin's a great place for it, and you do it for such a great cause. Nobody does it better. Going good today. Really spend a little extra film time, which we'll get into later in the show, because Atlanta was a completely different team last night than they were in the opener. So it took a little dissection on my part to have been at it all afternoon to figure out exactly what those differences are. But what a good win for the Colts. Not a dominating game, but just a tough, old-fashioned football game in that heat against a big division game that you on the road. And I thought that they really just battled their tails off, really went in there and won the game. Great one. This team is I think it's going to give us all cardiac arrest, because they're going to be 60-minute games, and there's going to be ups and downs, and they're going to go right down to the wire. But I think one of the things that really stood out to me, and I made a point of this in the preseason, and I'm not even sure if people were paying attention during some of that commentary in the games, but the biggest thing Sunday really was winning that fourth quarter. Despite the heat, despite all the things that happened along the way, despite Tennessee kind of rallying in the third quarter, the Colts won that fourth quarter 6-0. 4 straight defensive stops, an offensive drive highlighted by a 55-yard run, and, of course, the fade pass for a touchdown, and then the 4th and 1 that we made. Those were tremendous things that made the difference. And just for statistical, so people know, one of the things that Frank and this staff has brought to this team is the ability to play 4 quarters. This was not like this before. As a matter of fact, these are the stats I wanted to give you. In the 2018 season, the Colts went from 32nd in 17 to 10th offensively in the fourth quarter, and they went from 31st on defense to 5th in the fourth quarter. And to me, there's about 4 statistics, and you and I have talked about this, that really matters to me. I think they define good teams and bad teams. One of them is points given up, of course, turnover differential week in and week out, your quarterback, your QBR, what's your QBR rating for your quarterback. And then I think a stat that I've always put so much emphasis on is that fourth quarter stat, and that's just beautiful to be able to come in there and, because it's so many NFL games really are 7 points or less. A lot of them are 3 points or less. And so, it's a little bit like that NBA. You've got to play that last 5 minutes, that last 4 minutes to win. I think Frank's decision, number 2, was not only the right one, it was the decider. I really believed in it. I was critical of the Houston decision just because I didn't like the percentages. I didn't like what was on the field. I didn't want to have Rodgers win the game for us in 4th and 4. But that's beside the point. That's history. Yesterday, I felt good about this one. I felt like that with our offensive line surge, with Jacoby, who had gained 3.5 yards on the sneak in the third quarter. I thought that this was one that we could get, that we would get. And, really and truly, it took a lot of courage. A lot of coaches wouldn't do that. A lot of coaches would punt it and put it on the defense. But that minute and 17 seconds that we ate was so critical, because what it did is, with no timeouts, we made them eat their timeouts because of that decision in making it. They now, with no timeouts, had to go the length of the field in 1 minute and 7 seconds, and we had them then exactly where we wanted them. In other words, Mariota was in a pocket game, which he's not very good at. Their offensive line's not very good at. It's proven game in and game out. I forecast that ahead of time. time, and it's absolutely true. The kid is just two quarterbacks. He's an NCAA quarterback who can play on the edge, in the pocket, indecisive, can't make the good throws, inaccurate, almost beat us with his legs on that 15-yard scramble. But again, because there was no timeouts, there was no way to stop it, you weren't going to win that way. So, really tremendous praise for Frank on this one, and I believed it at the time. I think I texted you at the time. I said, I'm all for that one. I think the other interesting thing is the Colts did exactly what I thought they had to do, and they really won two situational battles that really mattered. The first one is the Colts on third down were third and fourth down. If you could, you got to throw fourth down in there. They were 8-15 in conversion, 8 for 15. Now, that was tremendous. That was outstanding. And a lot of it is something that I said last week to you on the pregame show, is that what was really important was to be patient on second down. Take your shots on first down. If it isn't there, get back into those third and short downs. And we did a really good job on second down of being patient. A lot of runs in there that were 5, 6, 7-yard runs that got us back into that situation. And we were able to convert. And then on the other side of the ball, we did a great job of getting them in third and long, and then basically taking it to them. And they were 1 for 11 on the third and fourth down. And again, we got them right back into situations where we want them, situations where we could make Mariota and the offensive line win. And then another thing I think is important that, we don't talk a lot about, in time of possession is not in itself a stat. If you take it in isolation, it doesn't always matter. But in this game, the 4 minutes, and particularly that minute and 17 seconds, mattered immensely. And I think basically what we're finding, and I talked about this in as soon as the luck thing looked inevitable, I said this is going to be a new Colts team. This is going to be a team that we're going to look at in a much different light. When Ballard came in, he stated that he wanted to build a team here, that it wouldn't be dependent on one guy, and it sounded good, but when you have a franchise quarterback, you say, well, that sounds good, but it's still going to be franchise quarterback. Well, this is a team really that is a collective team. A 19-17 win, to me, is what I envision for this team. I see a lot of this kind of football, going ahead. We had a lot of vets come through. Hilton, of course. Ebron came through. I thought Mack fought all day. For every yard he could get. Autry came back and dominated the game. Kenny Moore was silently good. I think Houston's playing a little bit better without numbers than people think as they move him around. And 53 finally came up with a good play on that spy sack. But we had some new guys that played great in that ball game. Of course, I think Brissett, obviously he had the 2 turnovers, the 1 fluke, the 1 throw. He'd like to get it back. He'd like to lead Hilton more on that, get it away from Ryan. It was a good play by Ryan. The other one was a fluke. I'm still not sure about that call, to be honest with you. If they would have done that with the Patriots in that Tuck Rule game, if they would have been that picky on that, I'm not sure the Patriot dynasty would have ever started, to be honest with you. But Jacoby was magnificent in some of those escapes. I think he's playing outstanding. I don't think we have much to worry about there. I thought Willis made a couple great tackles in the fourth quarter, coming up and get people down, really and truly, just a couple terrific plays. I thought Wilson's play at the end was outstanding, and I thought his interference was a terrible call. I agree with Archuleta on that one. I thought that was a really good call, but I thought that he came in and battled on that last play, on that fourth down play, even though the Titans mismanaged the situations immensely. And then, of course, Wilkins came in, and, he came in with those fresh legs and obviously was a great compliment to Marlon, because Marlon is a battler. He's patient. He runs. Sometimes he'll hold it a little bit like Le'Veon Bell and then turn it on, and he was battling. And all of a sudden Wilkins comes in, and Wilkins is a one-cut north and south guy, and he hit that hole so quick, and our offensive line did a great job. Gawinski mauled his guys. The left side mauled it. And then I thought Kelly did a really good job of getting up on the second level. Also, basically, we had some good blocks outside there. Actually, Campbell came in and got a crack, and I told you 25 wouldn't tackle anybody, and he wouldn't. He would not come in and make that hit, and that was that big 55-yard gain. So, certainly a lot of things to be happy about this. I told you that Tennessee would come back to us, that they would be and always have been a good matchup for us. But, man, it was a hard-fought game. We didn't get the big plays. We got the one pass interference on Jackson, but we didn't get the big plays I'd hoped to. So, that just made it a dogfight all the way.
Rick Venturi every Monday right here answers all the questions, all the thoughts, and tells you exactly what went down in the game yesterday. That Week 2 win for the Colts down in Nashville over the Tennessee Titans. All right, I want to take a break and come back with you. I want you to think about a couple of things here. It did look like, and I don't know if it was because of the indecisiveness at times of Brissett, was the offense seemingly the same as what we saw in week number 1 with the Chargers, at least game plan wise? I want to ask you that. And then we got to get your thoughts on Adam Vinatieri coming up on the other side too, because the Colts, and Frank Reich is firmly behind him, but he is a player's guy. He's going to go to bat for his guys. But is that the right move? Because now that's firmly in the lap of Reich and Chris Ballard. There's no doubt about that. We'll put Rick on hold, come back with Rick Venturi. Got to hear it coming up on the other side. If you have any questions, 239-1070. Email jmv@1070thefan.com. Back to the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline right now. Rick Venturi rejoins us. All right, where are you with the Adam Vinatieri situation, Rick?
Well, I'm probably a little bit closer to Jim on this. Obviously Frank has got to maintain confidence for his players. He never publicly is going to put it out there. He's going to be the guy that exudes confidence. Definitely has to be that guy. There's no question about it. He has to do that. He does it, and he does it extremely well. I do think, though, that there's no question that this is a results-oriented operation, and Vinny said it himself last week that you fight for your job every day of your life in your NFL career, be it a coach, be it a player. It's always about this week. It's never about what we've done, and he is the greatest of all time. There's no question about it. But, the empirical evidence shows a decline. You can go from 214 to 218. It's 11% drop in field goals, no question about that. And then the 5 misses in the last 2 weeks is just mind-boggling. And I think the amazing thing on that is I had kind of studied that because Mike Chappell had chronicled that decline in a preseason write-up, and so I went out and I watched Vinny very carefully early in camp, and I thought he was exploding the ball, to tell you the truth. I thought it was coming out of there as good as I had ever seen it. So I thought, well, that's just that'll just be a sideline in a career there, what happened at the end of last year. But now you've got it repeating. I have to think that it's really more in his head at this point, than it really is the leg, unless there's a physical problem that is just carried on and, created a little bit of a misstep there, because he had that groin problem at the end of training camp, and you didn't see him kick very much and all that. But I think you want this decision really to be his, and if he can pull it together and go on, we'll be just fine. But I think at this point in time, too, you have to protect yourself, and you have to keep your eyes open here in this situation and be prepared to move on if you have to.
I agree with you on that, too, and about what Adam has said himself. And now it's not just on Adam. I mean, now it's Frank, and it's on Chris, and we'll see if it goes from there. He just looks like, Rick, he looks like he's in a spot where he doesn't know the answer himself.
No, I think that's right, John. That's what I said. I think it is really, at this stage in his career, I don't think it's about leg strength or anything like that, or that Father Time got him. He's just in a very tough state right now mentally, and he can either fight out of it or not. I got to feel like he has so much experience that he can, and if in fact he wanted it to be the end, you would always like it to be his decision, certainly not have to make the move. But as always, as much as people will make fun of him and they'll try to cover it over there, Jim Irsay speaks the truth all the time. That's exactly right. Now here's the other problem that's a little complicated here. All of a sudden, that kicking game is really a vital part of this team's success. This team is not going to go in there and beat anybody 40-17. I mean, you're not going to run away with games. You're going to be in these tight games. I said it when Luck bailed out. I said, now the defense, if the defense can improve from giving up 21 points a game to 17, I actually used 17. I said then the offense can score that 21-24, then we can be really successful. Well, the defense held them to 17. They actually did, but we just barely eked it out, because of the missed kicks. And I think there's going to be, over the 16 Sundays, there's going to be more importance placed on every kick now, because it's, this team, just because of the way we play. That's yep. No disrespect. I like the way we play. I mean, we've had 370 yards rushing in 2 games. I mean, we're getting over 100. I mean,
Hey, Rick, if this was about length, as you mentioned, if this were about length, I mean, if it were just here or there, 45-50, that'd be one thing. But the complete shanking of extra points, I mean, he reminds me of watching Chuck Knobloch as a baseball player when he couldn't throw to second base. It just seems like he's got the yips.
No, there is certainly some of that. There isn't any question about it. And you just hope something we can come to a resolution. Maybe he has one good day and it's enough to get him over. But it's a very, very critical deal here. Not that your kicking game isn't always important, but right now, we could be very well 2-0. We're 1-1, and we won yesterday in spite of the special teams, not because of the special teams, in spite of it. And so, that's a little scary at this point.
All right, quick break. We'll come back, Rick. I'm going to get back to the question I asked regarding the offense yesterday, game plan-wise, compared to what we saw with the Chargers in Week 1. And then we'll look ahead to the Falcons because, as you mentioned earlier, they looked a hell of a lot different yesterday, or last night, if you will, in their home opener compared to how they looked on the road in Week 1 of Minnesota. So Rick's going to go on hold. We'll come back. Very important info from our guy, Rick Venturi. Venturi rejoined. All right. Was the game plan offensively different from that of game number 1, or was it more maybe Jacoby being indecisive and somewhat out of sorts on a couple of different occasions?
Well, I think basically as I looked at the tape, that's kind of how I looked at it. I looked like he was out of sorts, but then after I really studied the tape, I think Tennessee did a better job than they have done against us in the past. I think Frank came out exactly like I would have done, and I suggested this, is that, you come out and you take your shots on those corners. I thought that we had the big advantage on those corners. Kane did early in the game, beat the hell out of Jackson, which led to our first touchdown. Got a PI because he beat the heck out of him. But overall, they did a much better job of closing off the middle and forcing Jacoby to check down on that first down. He forced him to check down a little bit. But I think the two things that they did the best that they haven't done to us is that they did a lot more press coverage. They got up in our mess kit. They did a really good job. They pressed us, all of our guys. And what it did was it bought time for their rushers. So the press helped the rush. And I thought that, I didn't think that our pocket was as clean as it was against San Diego. I thought that there was a lot of pressure. People are really attacking our right side, and particularly Glowinski. There was one time when Casey just blew by him. And, I thought that they got a little bit of edge pressure off Costanzo, not sacks, but edge pressure. And what I thought is they collapsed it much better. But I think it all started with really good press coverage, and where a week ago we would go back and be able to throw off that back foot and get it in there quick. They denied a lot of that, including the interception by Ryan. Ryan did a great job of man-to-man coverage on Hilton inside there. And so I thought that they got much more pressure, even though it was only 3 sacks. But remember now, Jacoby was masterful. I mean, he got out of trouble. A few times. It was just like mind-boggling. I mean, he looked like Roethlisberger in his early days that, guys hit him and fall right off of him. So I thought they did a lot better job, and that meant that, we had to start to change. Once you start getting that man-to-man coverage, and if you can't beat it one-on-one, then you got to go to the rubs. You got to go to what we call the man beaters, the crossing routes and things like that we really didn't have to do against San Diego. So, we got to look at that really clean. Now, Atlanta is not a big press team. They're a very soft off team, but, when, teams will copy when they see that. But Tennessee, for the first time, and I've been very critical of them in the past, that's for the first time they really got up and pressed us and did a pretty good job. And then what they did a pretty good job on the running game, but if it does get them into trouble at certain times, is something that hurt us in preseason is they ran those linebackers through, not necessarily on a blitz, but they shot them as soon as they read run. Instead of waiting, flowing, and go, they would run through. And some of those plays that got thrown for losses there in the fourth quarter were the result of that. And that's why I think what happened is when Wilkins ran that really quick zone rather than delayed, he actually blew through there before they could adjust and ended up making that big run. But I think the game plan was altered a little bit by Tennessee's plan. Tennessee, again, did 3 things better than I expected. They closed the deep ball better early. They did a lot of pressing on us, which I think gave their rush a better chance. They attacked our right side, and then they did a lot of run-through on the run. So, those are things. When those things happen to you, then those are caution lights, and you're going to see them, whether it's Atlanta or you're going to see them in some form in the next few weeks. Now, the good news is we still our running backs, I'm not even counting the quarterback scrambles, our running backs went for 142. So, we're cooking with gas pretty well there.
It's Rick Venturi on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. The thing that stuck out to me about Atlanta last night compared to that first matchup against Minnesota is you saw Philadelphia. I mean, they were down to Deshaun Jackson, Alshon Jeffrey. Wentz went out, for, basically almost all of a possession. I mean, they had a lot of injuries to deal with. It seemed like that was a hell of a moment for Atlanta if they're going to get one to look kind of decent and look one. It still wasn't all that impressive, but it was a win.
Yeah, and they had such a tough opener. That's why I spent all afternoon, because when I watched that opener against Minnesota, I thought Atlanta was awful, to be honest with you. They couldn't stop or run. Dalvin Cook went absolutely bananas. I mean, I think Minnesota only threw 10 passes and absolutely destroyed them, and I do think their defense is really vulnerable. I think it's been on a death slide since the Super Bowl year. Now, they played much harder last night. I know Quinn was just absolutely upset after that Minnesota game and, read the riot act, called everybody out, said we're going to do what we said we were going to do. And they came out with fire in their eye. I played them all the time. We played those Dirty Birds when I was in New Orleans all the time. Very tough in Atlanta. There's no question about it. They played very, very well, much better at home. Now, the thing that you got, to me, I see them as inconsistent but very dangerous. Now, what do I mean by that? You never know which Atlanta team you're going to get, and that's because their defense is not very good. It slipped to 28th last year. They had a terrible opener against Minnesota. They've tried to pattern themselves after Seattle, kind of I guess I call it Seattle light. They try to go out and get speed and keep it simple. Speed and simplicity, the 2 S's. And what they've gotten out of it is a light team that can't handle it when you're just banging right at them. They got linebackers that look like safeties. and if you pound it right at him, you can hurt him, you gash him, and then the simplicity in coverage and lack of sophistication, you got holes all over it. So, there's specific ways to beat it that we can get into, but the danger lies. Here's the danger. The danger lies, and you've got a guy that can play at quarterback, and I know there are people that are high on him and they are not high on him, but this offense was 6th in the league last year, 4th in passing, way down in running. Their running game has really fallen off since 2016, and it's really hurt them because it hurts the protection and it puts more pressure on Matt. And he throws a million passes, but remember, this is a guy that was MVP of the league, and he's capable of those big nights and those big throws like he made last night. I mean, just last year, 35 touchdowns and 7 picks. Now, he's had a bunch of picks in the first 2 games, and which is kind of amazing for him. But I think part of that is he kind of knows he has to win the game passing because they're just not a very good running team right now, even though I think Ito Smith actually gives them some juice. But they're not a really good running team, and so they rely so much, and he's not afraid to stick it in there to those receivers, particularly Julio and Ridley. And so he'll get into trouble on interceptions because he'll try to stick it into coverage. But you've got a guy that's very, very capable, of big things at quarterback. There's no question about it. I mean, the guy's thrown for over 47,000 yards and 297 touchdowns. He's in studying him like I have this time around, much better athlete than I gave him credit for. He can get out of trouble. He can run the bootlegs. And then Julio Jones is the premier wide receiver. I mean, there is no one. He gives you a dimension that nobody else can give you because he has the great speed, the great range, big catch radius. He'll catch it in traffic. They move him everywhere. You better have a plan for him. I'm just telling you that right now because he is the guy that they're going to have on the weak side. Then he's going to be in the slot. They're going to stack him and bunch him so you can't necessarily get your hands on him. So you're going to need a nuanced plan for him. It's not something you can just line up and play high school and say we're going to stop him with effort. I mean, this guy is real. 1,400 yards plus 5 straight years. He was a little sluggish in that first one because he didn't play a lot and didn't play any in the preseason, but he exploded last night, and you saw what he can do. Just a monster. And the other guy you got to stop is Ridley. I think
agree.
Ridley is really coming into his own. Ridley is a little bit more stationary for him. He's really going to be on the outside most of the time. They're going to try to get him over the top. He's more of what I call an outside quadrant receiver, but he can go get it, and he's getting better and better. I think the third guy is Hooper. Their tight end, the young tight end, reminds me of Hunter Henry of the Chargers. Really good in that 3rd and 2, 4 situations with those option routes. He can run that stuff and catch it. Sanu, possession guy. So, and then their running backs again. Freeman and Smith. Smith has actually looked better than Freeman so far. He can get to an edge. Just don't let him get to an edge. But this is a very, very dangerous team on offense. Their offensive line is so. It played a lot better last night than it did against Minnesota. They're big across the front, very ponderous. This is not a team you want to run straight stuff. You want to move on them. Even Matthews really struggled against Minnesota. Now, he played better, but inside counter moves hurt him. On the right side there, the rookie McGarry from Washington is tough. He's tough, straight line guy, but he's stiff on the right side. You want to run Tex games here with him and Jaylen Brown. Again, big. If you look at Brown and Carpenter, they're big. They're ex-tackles, move to guard. And so you don't want to try to run over them. You want to give them games and move, and you want to run some blitzes. And the biggest thing is when you blitz, just make sure you got coverage that is at least a man and a half on Jones. Last night, night, Jimmy went to a zero blitz and they threw a quick screen to him and it was out the gate, because you just can't undress it on him like that. You just can't do it. And so it's a very, very, very dangerous team. Offensive end of it. Again, I think the other thing that's really critical, I want to make this point, is this is a team that throws more play action, downfield passes, and bootlegs than anybody I've ever seen. I mean, first down for them, they're going to try to get you in a basic zone defense, and they're going to run play action, and they're going to run all those guys down and in, down and post. They are trying to get a big play. Now, if it's not there, he will check it down. He'll check it down to a back. But you need to have a plan on those first down play actions that isn't pure zone. You're going to have to run with people. You're going to have to play some quarters where the safeties can come down and play the digs. I mean, I just don't think you can sit in that zone on all that play action. And I think that's a critical part of the game, that you don't let them get going on first down. Because on third down, they'll suffer because our front is better than their front. Particularly Autry now is back to where we think he's going to be. We're moving Houston around. I'd love to get Toure back, but I did think Lewis played pretty good on the outside last week. But that's the biggest thing. They're dangerous because they have perimeter skill. Again, a quarterback that's been MVP, that is capable of the big one. Now, he'll give it to you. He can have the bad game. Julio, premier guy, very good player in Ridley. Now, on the defense, they really played better. They moved around. They were so predictable. They lined up in their defenses, and they just got gashed in that first one. And I think you can gash them. I think they're undersized. They get pancaked at times. I would like to run at Beasley as much as I can. He's a good edge rusher, but he's typical of that weak side end in the league now. They have a hard time holding up on the run. I want to pound there. I want to pound right at Jones and Campbell, the linebackers. They're guys that really are like safeties. If you run wide, they're going to run you down. If you run back right at them, you can impale them. And so I think this is an off-tackle game, no question about it, because they'll sink those front guys. The best player, play in and play out, is Grady Jarrett, 97. He'll be in an interior guy, very dangerous rusher, very quick guy. Again, a little bit undersized. I mean, I liked him. Remember coming out in the draft, that was the year that I wanted us to take him. We took Gathers instead, which is fine. And then we ended up taking that nose guard out of Stanford on the route because Jarrett went high in the 5th round, if you remember. But he's had a terrific career, got paid for it. And the biggest thing, I think, Trufant has having a really, he had a really good night last night on the left corner. He's had his issues, but he looks like he's ready to go.
Yeah, that was his first interception last night. Yeah, he didn't have one last year.
No, and then he ended up with 2 of them. I mean, he looks better. They play a lot of off coverage, a lot of zone, and even in their man, they play it off and try to make it look like zone. They'll play a little variation if they get you in long yardage or third down, but not a real hard pressing man to man. Oliver played better last night. I probably would go after him over Trufant, but I think on early downs, again, they're going to play a lot of cover 3, Seattle, simple zone, and I think a lot like San Diego. I think or Los Angeles Chargers. This is a game where you can quick rhythm, hit those tight ends inside, work on the flats, work on the outside, and then just give them what they give you. And obviously, sometimes your own offense, if you study a team's offense, it'll tell you a lot about their defense because they play against one another. And obviously, all that play action is deadly against that 3-deep zone because you can move Campbell and Jones with play action, and you can run over routes over the top, over the middle, and get that ball in there, or work on their outside because there's a lot of single high. And I probably, because they play off, I think this is a week for double moves because Trufant will jump routes. He's a route. They read routes. Whenever you play a lot of off coverage, you become good readers of routes, and the way to get that is with double moves. Now, where they're most dangerous, everybody has danger zone. Like I said, inconsistent but dangerous. is their third down package, like most clubs in this league, have a unique package. Theirs is a NASCAR package, and what they do is they have Beasley on one side. Now, Beasley has never played like he did in 2015, but remember, in 2016, in the Super Bowl year, he had 15.5 sacks. Now, he had one last week and one hit. So, he looked decent, but he's on one edge. He's not real big, but he's fast as hell. And then on the other side is McKinley, who was their leading sack guy with 11 sacks. He's a poor man's Cameron Wake. He's not a fast guy. He's a little bit stiff, but he will power rush you primarily from the left side. He'll power rush you and squeeze the quarterback. Now they bring Adrian Claiborne, who's been around, was with New England last year, and they will put him inside, and he is a threat along with Jarrett. So when they put those four guys in the game on third down, they've got a pretty good rush package. And look for them. I mean, you got to have these caution lights. Look for them to put Jarrett right down there on Glowinski and run stunts with Jarrett and McKinley or Jarrett and Beasley. And that's what I think they'll do. I think they'll attack our right side and try to make some money if they can get third and long.
Hey, Rick, Pierre Desir is going to miss some time. We'll find out because concussion protocol is the spot for Darius Leonard. Let's say both of those players, hypothetically sitting here right now, unavailable. How big of an issue is that for the Colts D on Sunday?
Well, that's a really big issue because you have Desir, who probably day in and day out at this point is your best corner, is your best vertical corner. He has more size. He and Quincy more size and more length in a game like this, which I think is important. Now, this will be a great opportunity for Yasin and Quincy, and I think Quincy's had a really good training camp. I thought he played extremely well Sunday, and he's the kind of guy that will go up and battle a big guy. That would kind of be in the back of my mind. I would, I'd probably have him on. I'd probably have him on the big guy, on Julio, with Hooker over the top, because you need, if they throw that ball up to him in coverage, you need somebody that can go up like a Hooker, that can go up and get it. You know what I'm saying? Because he'll throw it into coverage to Julio. That's like they used to do with Moss and Carter back in the Minnesota days because of his size and his girth, and then put a good cover guy over there on Ridley and not let him beat you deep. But that's tough. And of course, the thing that Leonard gives you all the time is that loose play stuff. Like, he's not the greatest run defender in the world, wasn't even Sunday, but what he does is he makes a play for you, in that fourth quarter. And the irony of that sack that he got was exactly what happened last year. We rushed three, played man-to-man underneath, and let him go to the quarterback, let him just kind of look at the quarterback, and that Mariota just gets frozen in there. He just doesn't know what to do in the pocket. It's just every time.
And their handling of the clock there on that final drive. I mean, really, right before they got the ball back was ridiculous.
Was terrible. The one time on first down, they knew what they were going to do, and they wasted like 40 seconds, and then the third down, even Mariota has admitted now that it was a silly move to clock it. I mean, he get up there and run it, but thank God he did it. But the more important thing is, when you ask me about Leonard, Leonard was really sharp on that. He just sat, saw him looking around, and then, he was spying, so he saw that little crack, and he took it and went. And those are the kinds of plays that he certainly gives you. So, hopefully we'll get those guys back.
It's Rick Venturi right there. All you need to know after a Sunday game with the Colts, and then previewing what's up next. In this case, that is the home opener versus the Falcons coming up on Sunday on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Man, there was a ton of meat on that bone right there. And I completely, in closing here quickly, I completely agree with you. That is going to be the norm, what we saw yesterday, win or lose all season long.
Absolutely, that's the new Colts. It's a team effort. I kind of like it. I like the competitiveness that Brissett plays with. He's as tough a guy as you'll ever see. I think he's throwing the ball well. We're running it, outstanding. Again, that left side is good. Defensively, we played the kind of game that we had to play against this team. So, yeah, you're exactly right. We're going to be in those nail biters, those 21-17 games.
Yeah, no question about that. You'll hear Rick with us on the pregame show coming up on Sunday as well as we get you set for game number 3, week number 3, in the home opener for the Colts against the Atlanta Falcons. Rick via the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Hey, thanks for the kind words regarding Teachers Treasures and the golf outing today and working in between a lot of this stuff that's going on here. I always love having you on Mondays. You know that.
Oh, I love it, John. And the other thing that you might help me out on is I'm on with Matt there on the Coaches Connection, which appears late in the week on the Colts website, and that's a real in-depth look at Atlanta.
Yep, Colts.com, correct? Where you can find it. It's a voice of the Colts, Matt Taylor, and Rick, Colts.com, each and every week. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
All right, John, have a good one.
It's Rick Venturi right there, podcast 1075thefan.com. All you needed to know. We got to take a quick break, and we'll come back. From the legends in Franklin, the JMV Sucks Golf Outing brought to you by Larceny Bourbon for our teachers, treasures. Back with the other side, 93.5, 107.5 FM The Fan.